Okay, hello everyone. So today I wanted to talk to you guys about something that over the last few days I have been working out in my own head. Um, Mainly about your shadow self, your things about you that you most likely deny that are there, or that you project onto other people, like I do. I also wanted to talk about the feelings of shame and guilt over negative behaviors that you may have displayed in the past. Because we all have a past. And a lot of times, so I'm just going to speak from my own experience. I have hurt a lot of people in my life. Um, and I've hurt them out of like I've told you before, I'm gonna hurt you before you hurt me, because that's all. Because when you grow up conditioned in a certain way, which I was conditioned to feel unloved, um, just by the lack of care. And I'm not holding that against anybody. That was other people had, like my parents had their own things to deal with that they could not process, and they didn't get help for, and they didn't question. Um, but over the last few days, I have been, so on your chart, I have been like really just delving into my own personality and the darker parts of my personality, because getting to know yourself is an ever evolving process, and you come back to things. Life is not linear, okay? I do not believe that life is linear. I believe that life is cyclical, and that we come back to truths that we thought we understood, pain and trauma that we thought we worked through, and then another phase of your life comes around, and all of a sudden you're being asked to re-examine, re-look at things, um, and weed your garden, weed your soul of your own soul, weed yourself out of past behaviors. And the best way that I've found to do that, is to, okay, so I use an app called Astro Matrix. AStroMatrix. I suggest that you pay for the $10 a month or whatever it is, because it gives you such great detail about your birth chart and who you are as a person. But the bigger part is looking at your lunar return. Now, you don't have to use that site, you can use something else, but that's the best one that I have found. But you look at your lunar return in your life, and your lunar return, it's like you're experiencing your trauma every month. um because when the moon comes back to what its phase was at your birth, um those problems arise again, which explains a lot as to why I go through the same cycle, and probably everybody else goes through their cycles of their personalities. Like, when the moon is full, I'm a really nice person, but when it starts to get to a waning crescent to what it was when I was born, um, things start to go bad. The new moon is always a bad time, and I've always wondered, why am I stuck in this cycle when I'm aware of a cycle? But it's like you figure out that there is a cycle first, and then you learn what the cycle, what creates that cycle, what parts create the whole. And so I have always had this nagging feeling that there's never going to be enough, because that's how I grew up. I never, I'm always, and so by me feeling that there's not going to be enough, I try to hold on to things too tightly. Mainly relationships, love, that feeling of love. I try to snatch it up and keep it all for myself. And that is, it's been damaging, mostly damaging, because at the same time, I want this love, but I'm doing everything in my power to push the person away, because that's what I expect. It's like I go into a situation and I already expect something, and so I'm going to do everything in my power, whether that be negative or positive, to create that outcome. And so I was only made aware of I mean, I've been aware of this cycle. I just haven't broken down into it enough until a couple days ago, where I discovered the lunar return and your shadow self. Because you have two horoscopes. You have your horoscope, which is your what you are when you're born. But then at the opposite end of that, you have the energies that are playing out within you, which is your shadow self. And so, like me, I'm a Libra sun, but my shadow self is a Scorpio. And so my inner self, I have my lunar self, because you're both. You have to learn to integrate these energies, and that's what I'm doing now. I'm learning to integrate both my dark and light side, because the way I see it is everything in this reality is polar. So like a bee in a flower, it possesses the same, like the flower is there because of the bee, and the bee is there because of the flower. It's like they have this, it's like two heads of the same coin. They have this symbiotic relationship. Although they look vastly different, they look like two different operating systems, but they're just expressing themselves different. And I feel like that is how our personalities are. Our personalities are the same way, to where you could be so much like a person, or like me and Mark, where we are so much alike, and we both want the same thing, but we're both scared. And instead of being, when I'm in the face of fear, I'm avoidant. I'm not avoidant. That's Mark. Mark's avoidant. He acts, so when people act like they don't care, they're avoidant. When they automatically go, I'm independent, I don't need nobody, that's avoidant. That's an avoidant behavior, to where you think that it's like your outer shell. Okay, you're gonna do everything to protect your inner vulnerability, whether that be avoiding and like cutting people off, distancing yourself, whatever, or you're clinging, which is what I do. You cling to it. You try to fight for it, and you do everything you can, and you're just thrashing about, wanting things to go to your way, and it's like counterintuitive to what you actually want. And so all this time I'm operating out of fear, and I don't even see it. I'm so blinded by my belief system and by my biases and the things that I want out of life, that I'm disregarding all of the thrashing I'm doing, and all of the clinging I'm doing, and how much it's actually hurting me, not only me, but other people. And so I've had to, the best way I've seen so far, and it's only been a couple days, is to just be raw and open and honest. And instead of, acting like, oh, I don't need you, I'm good by myself. I'm not good by myself. Like, I just have to come to it's like when you come to a realization of, oh, finally. And I had the best cry about it the other day, or last night. I just let all this, it's like all this emotional blockage I was feeling, all this, and all this stems from my childhood. And yeah, you grow up and you get to a point where you're like, oh, well, your childhood shouldn't affect you anymore. I'm sorry, but your upbringing and the way you were taught to see the world affects you probably till the day you die. And it's always a process of evolving and looking back at yourself and to why you feel the way you feel, why you react the way you react. And it requires a level of honesty that I myself am not prepared to. I haven't, up until yesterday, been prepared to give or receive. I've always just, with me and Mark, I've realized a lot of our fights, a lot of us, is a lot of our things that are wrong is miscommunications. We're just not understanding each other, because we see things so vastly different, but that's not to say neither of us are wrong or right. And I always have these expectations of people that are negative, and that's not right. Like, I shouldn't always just jump to the negative, to the negative conclusion of, oh, they're going to hurt me, so I might as well do something first, or I just might as well just not care, or I might as well yell and scream and get my point across. It's like these, you could save yourself all of that trouble if you just acknowledge the darker parts of yourself and admit when you were wrong, and admit when, because you can't change somebody's perspective of you. Nobody sees you the way you see you. So I really suggest that you guys look up your lunar south nodes in your chart, your lunar return, and how it correlates with your personality. It is really eye-opening to finally see your shadow self that you've been running from and hiding from and ducking and dodging and denying. It's just all laid out right there for you. It's like you really can't deny it. You just have to integrate. You have to acknowledge when you are in that dark space and not cling. Like I can't cling to things, and I have wildly crazy expectations for people, and I put too much. I expect too much from other people, but not enough from myself, and I realize that's a big problem. Like I'm just I'm baffled by how blinded I've been. But I just wanted to come to you guys with this and give you give you some hope, that you don't have to be ashamed of the wrong that you did. You just have to acknowledge it and accept it and apologize for it. That's really all you can do. Because if you spend your life running from your own negative traits, that's all you're going to see in everything else. That's all you're going to manifest. And I promise you, I'm living proof that if you always point the finger, play the victim, all this stuff, you're always going to have problems. But once you start to integrate and acknowledge and look at that darkness of yourself that we all have, we all possess it because we're human. You can't really help it. But you're not just a human, You get my drift? You're not just a human, you're a higher being. There's a spirit within you, within your humanity, that you can tap into, and it can give you loads of strength. And looking at your dark and light parts of yourself, and then seeing that as the whole, instead of all these fragments of yourself. You look at your zodiac and you're like, well, that kind of fits me. And then you'll read your birth chart and you're like, well, yeah, that's kind of true, but a lot of it, there's a lot missing. There's some darkness about me. There's, why am I fascinated with death? Why am I fascinated with, figuring out people's secrets? Why am I the way I am? And it's all there in your shadow chart. So I love you guys, and I will see you in the next video.